So you've probably heard about news reports where young, apparently healthy athletes had passed away during exercise. Was that due to the sickle cell trait or something else? And just to recap, the sickle cell trait means a person has one copy of the sickle cell gene, but does not have sickle cell disease. This is actually fairly common. It's estimated that about 300 million people worldwide have this sickle cell trait. And while it does get its share of attention, it's important to know that most people with the sickle cell trait lead normal lives with no symptoms and have a normal life expectancy. But sometimes when an individual does pass away suddenly who has this sickle cell trait, sickle cell crisis is often blamed, even though the person does not have sickle cell disease. Sickle cell crisis is actually a painful condition that occurs in people who have sickle cell disease, where the sickled red blood cells actually block blood flow through small blood vessels. So here's the report that's got everyone buzzing. It was published in the American Society of Hematology. These researchers looked at over 1,400 different clinical studies, but only found 18 of them that were worth further investigating. And here's what they discovered. There was no solid evidence that people with sickle cell trait experience the typical sickle cell crisis like those who have sickle cell disease. They also found no direct link between having the sickle cell trait and dying suddenly during exercise. That is, unless the person also had rhabdomyolysis. In fact, of the 18 studies that were included in this review, only one of them had strong enough evidence to evaluate death risk, and it showed that people with the sickle cell trait were not more likely to pass away during intense exercise. But here's the twist. That same paper also found that those who had the sickle cell trait were 54% more likely to get rhabdo during intense physical activity. In other words, what they're really saying here is it's not the sickle cell trait that's causing sudden death in athletes, rather it's rhabdo that's the real danger. And sickle cell trait raises the risk of rhabdo during intense physical activity. Now, I also want to circle back and point out that of the 18 papers that were included in this review, only one of them had strong enough evidence to link sickle cell trait to sudden death during exercise. To me, that means more research is necessary to get to the bottom of this. So what does this mean for you? Here's what you need to know if you have sickle cell trait. Number one, you don't appear to be at greater risk of a sickle cell crisis like those who have sickle cell disease. Number two, right now there doesn't appear to be any strong evidence that sickle cell trait by itself puts people at greater risk of sudden death during intense exercise. That said, you still should be aware of the symptoms of rhabdo, which can include anything from muscle pain, weakness, muscle swelling, the inability to bend or extend your arms and legs, pain felt at rest, and also the dark-colored urine symptom. And when I say dark-colored urine, I don't necessarily mean yellow. Rather, I mean it has the appearance of iced tea or has a reddish, brownish look to it. However, and this makes things even more complicated, many of these classic symptoms of rhabdo don't often show up in people who have rhabdomyolysis, which means the best way to know for sure if you have rhabdo is to get checked out by a doctor. Now, if you do have sickle cell trait, there are some things you can do to reduce your risk of rhabdo and other complications. And number one, I would say, is don't push yourself through your mental breaking point where your body tells you to stop, but your mind will not let you, especially if you're doing this in a hot and humid environment. Also, remember to hydrate regularly, especially if you're in a hot and humid environment. Begin new types of physical activity and exercise slowly. In other words, if you're going to work out in the gym, don't start with 3 or 4 sets, start with just 1 set. Listen to your body. When you think you've had enough, stop. That goes for if you're on the playing field, if you're taking your, say, a group exercise class, or even if you're working with a personal trainer. Listen to your body and stop when you think you've had enough. And remember to take rest days too. If you are in pain, don't work out when you're in pain. Now, I think these are great tips for everyone to follow, but especially for those who have the sickle cell trait, because a little awareness can go a long way to prevention.